The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Responsive Web Design and User Experience. This webinar is the launchpad for the Digital Month program presented to you by Accenture on techgig.com. Digital Month is a perfect opportunity for you to learn the latest trends and technologies in digital. It will bring to you various webinars, contests, and panel discussions. While the potential for learning and value add to your career is huge, it also gives you a chance to win exciting gadgets by taking part in the contest on digital. That's not all. You could win gift vouchers by merely referring your friends and colleagues to participate in the activities of the Digital Month. Our guest speaker today is Merlo Herediano. He's the project manager at Accenture. Merlo joined Accenture in 2008. He brought with him 18 years of IT experience spanning across different industries. He is a manager and the capability lead of Philippines Delivery Center, Digital Interactive, UX, UI. Other than his capability role, he is the delivery lead, project manager for various products, consumer goods, and services project in the Asia Pacific and Latin America. In his spare time, he paints and cooks and experiments with graphic imaging application. So, without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Merlo.
Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you very much, Ara and Hannah, for that short introduction. Okay, so for the audience online, thank you so much for taking time and be a part of the IDC Tech Month. Okay, so let me just check a moment. Okay, so the presentation is Responsive Web Design and User Experience. So this presentation is a point of view of responsive web design and user experience. So in total, I actually have around 8 slides, so this will be very short. We intend to complete this within 1 hour. So I will be taking you through this agenda. So very briefly, I'll be discussing what is responsive web design, understanding what RWD is, some thoughts from the e-business leaders and their approach, some implication challenges, downside in adopting RWD, delivering RWD, and then I'll touch a brief on user experience, stakeholder engagement, and legal obligations. We will proceed with usability and user experience, UX activities, how it can help, and mapping it with ADM. Okay, so relax, and now let's start. Okay. So what is responsive web design? So one of the hottest issues in web developer circles for the past 3 years is accessibility of website on various devices. Other than the standard desktop or laptop screens, while the subject is not new, right? So it has been, I believe you have heard about RWD for the past few years, but it has taken on a relatively new approach with respect to how to deal with the opportunities ahead. With mobile devices, tablets, and similar gadgets gaining ground faster than most of us can keep up, it required organizational stakeholders to address an issues encompassing user interaction and acceptance of their website on the latest undersized gadget. And let us not forget other devices also acquiring web-enabled screens such as refrigerators, washing machines, and other everyday appliances. And add to that are the wearable like watches and spectacles like Google Glass, right? So where does RWD or responsive web design fall into picture, right? So just very quickly, the phrase responsive web design or RWD was actually coined several years ago by Ethan Marcotte. It also appeared in his first book, which was entitled A Book Apart, Responsive Web Design. So if you look at that, there's a very brief definition about responsive web design. And responsive web design, if I may say, is a web design and development technique that creates a site or system that reacts to the size of a user screen. Responsive design will optimize a user's browsing experience by creating a flexible and responsive web page, optimized for a device that is accessing it. So in the slide, when you say RWD, it is actually something that can be delivered and clearly displayed on whatever devices that you may have. It can be mobile sites, iSites, as well as desktop. Okay, so if you're seeing my next slide, so while RWD or responsive web design it doesn't promise a cure-all to these requirements. However, it indeed presents the concept practice to provide the most delightful user experience. So instead of forcing a smartphone user to pin, zoom, which we all do, or scroll to view content designed for consumption on a desktop, an RWD site or a responsive site responds within the constraint of the device to deliver an experience that is contextual to the size of the screen as size, right? So gone are the days that you view a site and then you need to expand because what you see on your mobile device is actually what you see also in the desktop, right? So you see the full screen on your mobile, and then you need to zoom in, pinch it out to be able to see the screen clearly, right? So with responsive design, it can actually adjust to whatever devices that it's being outputted to. It can be tablet, it can be your mobile device, or it can be a desktop. So I'm loading my screen, just a second. Okay, so actually RWD is making academic attempts, right? So there has been a lot of, you can see a lot of articles, a lot of, channels talking about RWD. And it's making scholarly attempts, actually, and inroads at defining the technologies necessary to effectively display website across all devices, right? So I will not attempt to be very technical in this session, but very simply, a responsive design is not a single technology. Again, I repeat, a responsive design is not a single technology. RWD is a set of techniques that allow web pages to serve the needs of both mobile and desktop users. A responsive website design starts with the primary task of incorporating front-end and server-side solutions, right? So I believe, perhaps a good number in the audience has been developing a website, web-enabled applications. So it's not something that is actually very new, but I'd like to focus on RWD. So I was saying that, it's actually different sets of technology incorporating front-end and web server-side solutions. So it can be like a JavaScript that often triggered by window match media, right? There's a clear, extensive use of CSS3 Like the media queries also, media query module under CSS3, which allow content rendering to adapt to conditions such as screen resolutions. Example of that is, smartphone screen, computer screen. There's also like, which is extensively used to produce or deliver RWD is the app media rule, right? So with app media rule, a website can have a different layout for screen, or if you want to print that, or mobile phone, tablet, etc. So the app media rule allows different style rules for different media in the same style sheet. Of course, fluid grids that uses percentages instead of pixels for column widths. It has the same responsive capabilities also as the fixed grid system, ensuring proper proportion for key screen resolution and devices. So to add on that, there's EM that everyone is familiar, flexible images, flexible videos, and the fluid types. So all of which allow the responsive website to adapt its layout to the viewing device using agent and environment, user agent again and environment. If you're seeing my slide, that's a good example of an RWD site. So the source is time.com. So very nice site, a very good example of a responsive web design. Wherein, you can see as if, you're seeing 3 sets of code base. You view that on your mobile device, the content is there. The same thing if you view that with a tablet or a desktop, right? So you view the same content, but the format is the same, specific to the device that where you deliver the content, right? So on the left, obviously, is a view of what is it if it's a mobile device. In the middle is what you see if you look it up in a tablet, and on the right side is what you see when you view that on the desktop. So a very good example. So the next slide is actually, how the e-business leaders approach to enable multiple touch points. So there's actually a lot of discussions on this, a lot of, I would say, people agree on one thing, some may not, but there's actually a lot of strategy to implement this, right? So if you look at the current state, the traditional, so websites, using the traditional approach, so mostly it is actually outsourced. The development is outsourced and maintained, right? They also create this standalone mobile development group. So it's actually a different entity doing website for different target peripheral devices. So there's so much investment actually and cost in maintaining the current traditional sites. So as new gizmos or new tech gadget comes out, more frequent updates are needed because a business to be competitive need to cope up, right? So the past few years have seen an explosion of browsers-enabled devices hitting the market, including gaming consoles, tablets, notebooks, e-readers, smartphones, right? And smartphones, each utilizing its own browser. Sometimes, different brands, different native browsers, right? So different screen resolution, orientations, and layout. So as this growth continues, users expect their web experience to translate accordingly. So there's actually a lot more expectations from the users as these new tech gadgets come out. And demand for scalable and responsive web design will persist and continue to expand, right? So just for the traditional, but what's the future state via RWD? So, most of the implementation that I've seen actually, it means that, it's back to one web team again, right? So because for RWD, it's actually something, just maintaining one code base rather than having multiple code base specific or targeted for different devices. Although it's still separate mobile, tablet, and desktop usability experts. But, they also work together to support a single team of web designers. So it's actually the external, consultant that are actually very specialized. But for an effective RWD team, it should be one. So responsive design calls also for a breakdown of development silos, right? Putting all web responsibility back into a single team, right? So I believe most of us are actually doing some kind of development, delivering projects to our clients, and then that silos attitude is always there, right? So it actually meant that, it's an attitude found in some organization that occurs when several departments or groups do not want to share information or knowledge, right, with the other teams or other individuals in the same company. So we actually have, as developers, have this, silo mentality. This mentality actually reduces efficiency and can be a contributing factor to a failing corporate culture, right? So with a new approach, getting back all the, the patches all over, putting them on a single web development team, it actually erases that mentality. So the team can be more effective, more productive in developing a good customer experience side. Obviously, it simplifies many of the challenges that e-business teams face today, especially with their web technology architecture. So let me go to my next slide to, just go some deep dive on the web technology architecture. Okay, so how RWD simplifies challenges on e-business teams that e-business teams face to do with their web technology architecture. So with the new approach, there's actually a good number of challenges that has been addressed. So with this approaching RWD, and coming up with a single code base for all web experiences, it will actually produce a good number of advantages. The practice has always been having different code sets for different media. So with the use of CSS3, the media queries, as I mentioned, applying that to specific style sheet or page based on the screen size. So that can actually address, different patches, different code targeted for different devices. With RWD, a single site for all, you can have a single site that can address all the expected web experiences, right? So before different sites for different audience and media, that's what we do, right? So if the target is a desktop, that has always been the default. When the mobile devices came out, the tablets, the usual approach was actually to create another code base to address that media output. So with RWD, that challenge has been addressed. it can simplify the site management configuration, right? So solutions will likely be able to reduce their hosting and infrastructure expenses. And then maintaining multiple sites has always been a nightmare. We know that updates is not simply just changing codes here and there, but it requires a lot of testing, right? So with RWD, with a single code base, there's actually a significant reduction in maintenance risk and release cycle times, right? So, like for example, there has been a shift to simply smoke testing on each release without the need to undergo comprehensive end-to-end functionality regression testing, right? And then also the code base is identical across all devices, and developers know exactly where they made changes and where the problems are likely to be. So in effect, that will obviously lower the risk. With RWD, you can have a single device agnostic URL structure, right? So, you know, when the new devices came out, you know, websites are already served in your mobile phones, in the tablets, right? I believe that, you know, now if you can recall that, looking at the website in your web phone, you can actually notice that the URL will change, right? So you have those M.dot and the T.dot domains, and all that redirection rules. So with RWD, you know, you just get rid of that. It's very seamless, and you won't even notice. So one URL across. And then of course there's the SEO format. So what it does is actually, you know, it saves you all the effort, you know, to have a single product page that will benefit from aggregate sum of all the links. So you don't have to, from an SEO perspective, you know, there's actually less effort to implement that. And then it's very scalable, right? So non-responsive design can be very limiting. Before you need to factor in all possible media that you can think of and develop on a common denominator. So the thinking before was actually more on, okay, what are the possible, you know, screen resolution or device that would view this application. So you need to factor that in, you know, and then, you know, get a common denominator, hoping that all display will go out as expected. But, you know, it's actually very challenging to do that, right? So so very, very cumbersome, and, you know, very, very, very challenging to implement. Let me just go to the next slide. So what you're seeing there is actually, you know, just a survey where the e-business teams are, what are they planning, right, in the months or years to come to implement RWD, right? So apologies for that. It's a 2011 survey, but I was actually looking at, you know, the Forrester research, but, you know, you need to pay for the newest survey. But then again, it's actually the same trend. In fact, it's even increasing. Right? So there has been a distinct audience shift towards mobile browsing, and responsive design represents the simplest way to reach across users on multiple devices, and it ensures seamless user experience. So 2013, last year, has been hailed as the year of responsive design. And with increasing preference of readers to read news online across multiple devices like tablets and smartphones, responsive design is becoming increasingly important, right? So it's actually very challenging to cope up with, you know, with all the different devices coming out. We have the glasses like Google Glass, we have the wearables, so many things to really chase on. So RWD is actually, it's coming out in the picture, and there's clarity that is the way to go, right? To my next slide. So as I was saying, RWD is not actually a cure-all, right? So, we always hope that, one solution can actually address all the needs of the users as well as the audience, right? But again, responsive web design, while it offers, really good experience, but it also has some challenges and the downside, right? So when you develop RWD, right? So, I think, segue to that, there has actually been a lot of requests, from our clients. I've been managing teams as a delivery lead, chasing opportunities across, and then, what you hear from client are actually like, I want a responsive web design. And that is something that entities or organizations should understand, that implementing an RWD is not actually a solution, a cure-all. There's downside to it because, for one, developing a responsive page is actually very time-consuming. It is time-consuming, but having a careful thought process will actually be rewarding. But then again, it actually requires a lot of time, more on the planning, what you want to achieve, looking at what experience the user would want, what are the user's objectives, right? So it needs and requires a really careful thought process, right? Another thing is having an all responsive design, again, as I mentioned, is not a cure-all. There are limitations. So like, for example, however you want for your website to be as rewarding as possible for your users, giving them that experience, but it cannot be, the users have their own preference, right? It can be, driven by constraint, like in the company, wherein you cannot just get the latest of the browsers, right? The newest technology. It can be a constraint on the user's budget, wherein he cannot upgrade right there to be able to get a really great experience, right? So mind you that older desktop browsers will throw a spanner in the works, right? So like, for example, IE7 and 8, right? So it may be Jurassic for us, but I'll tell you, there's actually a lot of people or users still using the same the older browser versions, right? Much more, if people are viewing that from their organizations, like if they're working, wherein users actually do not have a free will to install version, and then it's actually controlled by security teams in terms of what versions to install. So expect that not everyone will actually have the same experience. Performance is not given, right? So there will always be downsides to new technologies, right? So as if you look back at 10 years back, we have seen a lot of upgrades, new versions of new technologies. However, the constraint there is actually your hardware needs to cope up with that, right? So new applications, new experience requires also really good hardware. So that's the downside, and not everyone can actually upgrade to the newest hardware that can actually display what you want to and provide that experience. Another thing is customers and even us are already using existing e-commerce or perhaps content management system platforms, right? And then these platforms are, this is something that we did not develop, and then we can be dependent on what functionality are embedded on those applications, right? So using existing e-commerce might not give you the real experience that you want that you want your users to experience. So the older e-commerce or CMS platforms sometimes do not have upgrading support for a responsive design, right? Or support to use HTML5 or CSS3. So that's gonna be very frustrating and painful at some point, because you need to wait for the next version, the next support, then the next patches. So that requires a lot of patience there. And then of course there's always that cost to upgrade. RWD also, I believe you'll agree with me, it requires a front-end rewrite, right? So it's not something that you can do overnight, using all day as the code base that you have. So you need to plan, you need to rewrite existing HTML and CSS front-end code. And then another thing, especially for the enterprise users, so redesigning big sites definitely will require cross-functional collaboration. So it's not actually something that I wanted this to be upgraded to be responsive, right? So it's not something like just putting a team of X number of people and then let them do the thing. Right, so enterprise solution interact with different applications, right? So a lot of interfaces. So it needs a lot of collaboration to be able to deliver that. You need, other than that, it's not the usual development team that you already have to do everything. You might need a user experience designers, right? Usability experts, UI designers, so a lot of resources that you may be needing to deliver that web experience. And of course, again, at the end of the day, it requires a lot of extra effort, right? So there's this philosophy that we associate with it, progressive enhancement, right? Which can be used to develop and apply unique experiences for a specific device, right? So when you say progressive enhancement, it's actually a strategy for web design that emphasizes accessibility, semantics, HTML markups, external style sheets, and scripting technologies. So progressive enhancement uses web technologies in a layered fashion that allows everyone to access the basic content and functionality of a web page. So using any browser or internet connection, while at the same time also providing an enhanced version of the page to those with more advanced browser or software, or users with greater bandwidth or a much more slower bandwidth. Next slide. I already covered that, so here. So is RWD or responsive web design right for you, right? So, you know, giving it a careful thought, you need to have some consideration, right? So it's not actually just I jump on the fence. We're in like overnight. You say, okay, let's do an upgrade and be responsive as we want. We need to consider a good number of things. More importantly, is that HTML5 and responsive web design are mutually exclusive. So when you say mutually exclusive, this cannot occur at the same time, right? So very simply, as an example of mutual exclusion is actually like tossing a coin, right, once, wherein which you can get result either the heads or the tails, but not both, right? So another thing also, like everyone wants to jump to HTML5 or, you know, to RWD. So as an early adopter, or, you know, for us who wants to go with the trend, there will be many challenges that will lie ahead, right? So as awareness of responsive design increases, so business professionals should position themselves or ourselves to take advantage of the code libraries, right? It's actually, you know, industrializing, reusing with what we have, doing some upgrades so that we can deliver RWDs, you know, coming up with the identifying what the developer tools to use, right? Harvesting the best practices as the support options emerge from both commercial vendors and the open source community. So there's actually a lot. You know, we don't have to, you know, reinvent the wheel. There's actually a lot of items or, you know, write-ups about responsive web design, tips, experiences, best practices that we can actually look into to lessen the effort and the cost. Another thing also, delivering a full responsive web design, it may be something that, you know, beyond the traditional way of doing things, right? So before, you know, when you come up with a website, it's actually something that everything can do, right? Everyone in the team can do. So you have a developer, it can be PHP, it can be like Java, Microsoft ASP.NET, you know. People who are actually into developing websites actually have that creative, you know, side on them, and then we usually, you know, just ask them, leverage them to come up with the design. But it's actually something that we want to think into, right? So because when you deliver a full RWD, you may need probably some agency help, right? So when you say agency, it's actually something that is very specialized, people with really creativity, people who can actually come up with, you know, a good concept to deliver that experience. So it might need some external inputs as you deliver your website. And then, you know, talking to your customers, that's actually something that, you know, you really want to sit down and then, you know, just don't jump right there into, right? So that you need to consider the timing, you need to consider if it's fit for you or fit for your customers, right? So from experience, a lot of our clients actually just want, you know, the best of or the newest technology. Like right now you hear a lot of requests like HTML5, I need a UX designer, right? And then, you know, oftentimes we actually fill in people who has the skills, but then again, as development progresses, it never needed HTML5, right? So that's something that where we can add value, sit down with our client, sit down with the operators and really see, what do they want, because oftentimes our customer doesn't really know what they want. And then another thing is, well, it's the trend, it's also really being, hyped too much, right? So we need to manage expectations with our customers or with our clients, right? So responsive web really doesn't, it's another thing, right? So it really doesn't replace existing apps or the functionality. Is actually something that fulfills the experience of the user, right? So it's a different thing in terms of functionality. We need to make sure that the functionality that our client needs is still being delivered, and then enhancing the experience of the users, right? So again, it's not a cure-all. Expectations have to be managed. Okay, next slide. Well, the key to responsive design is actually the idea that one code base serves multiple displays, right? So we mentioned that. So without degradation in performance, in the presentation, RWDs should be display agnostic, right? So any whatever devices that you may want to output your application, that should display, as expected. We believe and understand the benefits from, but from the benefits of RWD, but from the process and project management approach, there's actually that question, right? So which direction should you go? So, based on experience, it's very challenging to use waterfall method for in developing RWDs, right? So it can be used, but it's not actually preferred, right? So we're very familiar how waterfall works. So, it's actually very sequential, right? So with RWD, you need to cover everything. Who are your users, what the devices, what's the target devices, like your target audience, everything you need to factor early on, right? And then you proceed to, from an analysis perspective, you proceed with design, right? And then you cannot proceed with code unless you finalize, so it takes a lot of time. And then upgrades will be very challenging, right? It can be that in the middle of your development, a new device may come out, right? So let's say, for example, Spectacles or Google Glass, and then all of a sudden your client will say, hey, I need that. So that will be very challenging. So Agile is actually the way to go when you do RWD. So I don't have to go into detail what Agile is, but RWD will require a lot of iterations or sprints, like as you develop. So RWD and Agile is actually a good marriage. So they can actually work well. My next slide. Okay, so just very quickly on this, right? So we are indeed entering a new age of web design and development. So there are so many options available now, and there will be far too many in the future to continue adjusting and creating custom solutions for each screen size. Devices and advancement technology, we should today, right, create websites that are future ready right now, not tomorrow, right? So what I'm saying is actually, thinking in the future, your clients might not have that RWD requirement, right? They just want functionality, but that's actually something that we can add value, discuss with them, let them see what will happen in the near future, what are the trends, because they might they might come back to us and say, hey, you never told me, you were supposed to be the expert. So understanding how to make a design responsive to the user doesn't require too much learning, right? And it can definitely be a lot less stressful and more productive than learning how to design and code properly for every single device available, right? So discuss that with your client. RWD that we talk about, the previous, the few slides that we have gone through, is not the final answer to the ever-changing mobile world, right? So this will keep on changing. So this is a work and in progress. And I would like to say that responsive web design is a mere concept that, when implemented correctly, can improve the user experience. Right, so that leads me to my next few slides. I have like 3 more slides, which can give a view of the user experience, its consideration and delivery. So what you're seeing there in the screen is actually, I want to give you a case of then and now. So throwback Accenture 1953, right? So the client, say General Electric, the project, it was an automated payroll and some supporting systems. The media, it's actually the first corporate computer in the USA. Who are the users? Any guess? Of course, to operate this huge specialized equipment, it needs specialists or specialists that are trained to use this machine. So this is how things are done, 20, 30 years ago. Now, fast forward, what are we doing now? So, the client can be anybody who wants the latest of technology. Project can be an enterprise consumer app. It can be in the health and public service, right? It can be on the financial services, right? But the context is actually ubiquitous computing, right? So when you say ubiquitous computing, it actually means that the application is made to appear everywhere and anywhere. So that's actually a very big challenge. And then who the users are, you guess it, right? It can be anybody, right? So if you're, developing a CGNS application wherein you have people who can buy, you have a cart in your website, so it can be it can have different users, with varying ages, different segments, right? So you need to be aware of that. Next slide. So businesses to be competitive need to have a wider audience. So business applications are not just for a select few, but for a larger audience. So to be able to do this, user interaction is not just to the business and the developers, but the system must be able to handle different user interaction to deliver the ultimate user experience. And when you have a wider audience, your system must be able to handle without discrimination, right? So I'm saying again, your system should be able to handle without discrimination, because your audience can be a lot of different, people and personality. So, and then if you cannot serve that, then you may have, trouble with the load. So that goes to my next slide. So come the Equality Act, right? So this is something very specific to Europe, but having, a good number of clients from that geography, and then also some discrimination laws, local laws that we may have where our client is, right? So it is something that we need to be very conscious about. So a 2005 study found that as many as 97% of European public services websites fail to provide a minimum level of accessibility, right? So to address this, the Disability Discrimination Act, or DDA, in 1995 came into force on the December of the following year, in 1996, where website owners were actually obliged to ensure that their websites are accessible to users with disabilities, right? And then after over a decade in force, the DDA requirements was actually merged into a new one, which is the Equality Act of 2010. Okay, so that act was actually just to simplify everything and bring to clarity to the diversity of previously extant discrimination legislation, because the first DDA was actually very complex and hard to understand. So, just a view of the, a portion of that. That's section 29(1) of the 210 Act. It actually says, in summary, a person concerned with the provision of a service to the public or a section of the public for payment or not must not discriminate against a person requiring the service by not providing the person with the service, right? So accordingly, neglecting to provide a service to a disabled person that is normally provided to other person is unlawful discrimination. So you might be thinking, what's the connection? So this actually applies to commercial web services as much as to traditional services, right? So today, web designers and developers and operators, which is our client actually, clearly need to be more conscious of accessibility issues. So even if our clients or operators are not deliberately excluding disabled users, which I don't think that will happen, they could find themselves on the wrong side of the law. So we need to add value to our clients. So as Accenture, we need to be conscious and provide that value to our clients. So early on, clients should be advised that legal requirements exist. There's that Equality Act that we need to consider in our projects. Projects should recommend to clients to seek specialists, especially in the legal side of it. Clients must direct also what action should be taken during design. And then it is also important for all to understand the philosophy behind the act, right? So there's actually a lot of details on that if you want. So you can just search Equality Act and then what you need to consider. So that, discussing that with the client, making them aware and conscious about that could actually add value to our delivery. My next slide, I only have like 7 minutes to go. It's actually about usability and user experience, right? So there has actually been a lot of mix about, well, usability expert, in terms of role, user experience, there's experience design or experience designer, right? So there's actually a lot of mix up. So just to illustrate between the two, here's actually a very good example that I got from the web, right? So there's this customer looking for a new digital camera. He goes into a large electronic retailer's website, and then, of course, browsing, he quickly finds the camera she wants, right? So she puts it in the cart, and then without incident, pays for it using an option to pick it up on the same day. Of course, using her credit card. So, it was seamless. So it was quick and easy. So the customer was actually very pleased and excited to receive her camera. Now, on the same day, she arrives at the store. She initially doesn't know where to go, as no visual cues present themselves. So, after a 10 to 15 minute wait at the customer service desk, she was actually told that, hey, ma'am, you're in the wrong place and needs to find another desk, right? So you can just go there and then, find the sign online receiving. So the user or the customer went to that area. Once she find that desk, the clerk who was entertaining and who obviously, was just about to end his shift, just told the customer, okay, we do not have any stock. The camera that you selected is actually out of stock. So he was offered to buy a different camera, and then at this point, but to receive a credit for her original online purchase. So he was asked to just call an 800 number. So you have a customer that ends up leaving the store without a camera and a change on her credit card she needs to resolve. So this scenario highlights the difference between usability and user experience, right? So going back, usability actually answers the question, can the user accomplish their goal, right? So in this case, our camera shopper, from a perspective of the site's design, she did accomplish the goal, right? So being very satisfied with the result. But the entirety of that, the user experience, was not actually achieved. So user experience actually answers the question, did the user have as delightful an experience as possible, right? So in our case, the store portion of the experience canceled out that online portion, right? So user experience as a whole is actually something that encompasses usability, right? So in our example, the online portion was the only thing involved. Our customer would have been delighted with the results and, likely shop again. But because of the total user experience, you'll likely resist shopping with that brand again, right? So I guess you will agree with me. So in this case, the usability of the site involves only those people who directly influence the design of the site. However, to create a pleasurable user experience, we now have to involve a lot of people all over the organization. So including those people dictating how the store operations are designed and implemented. So it can be, it needs a lot of effort, but if you can perfect that, it can be very rewarding, right? So very quickly, so how can user experience activities help? So in our projects, it is imperative to integrate UX activities to deliver that full customer experience, right? So we need to go beyond what the enterprise or the solution will do or offer, and we need to consider the users early on. So we need to think about who are the target users, understand the segments, right? Will the technology deliver that experience? Are the business objectives achieved at the same time giving that full customer experience? So a lot of things. Next slide. So in Accenture, we're actually enabled to do this, right? So look at ADM as we have UX deliverables that can address and map to each of these processes, right? So like for example, from a person perspective, we have AP235, which is the personas. We have WP241 for the experience, which is heuristic review. PL101. We have WP263 to address that user segmentation model. AP346, of course, PL101. So we need to leverage these templates and then be make this part of our deliverable. Next slide. So the next slide is actually just an example of AP235, so that's persona, right? So just to give context, a persona is actually a document that describes the ways in which certain types of people will use your website, right? So usually one persona is created for each type of user. So personas are used to show you the goals that the users will be trying to achieve on your website. So a very important document to deliver a full experience, right? It's a very important deliverable also to cover what the different users and what they're trying to achieve. Last two slides. So UX actually drives engagement, right? So it strengthens the trust. I don't need to explain in detail. Reduces friction because early on you actually have some really good understanding with your client, who the users are, what they're trying to achieve. It also encourages collaboration because you'll be interfacing a lot with your clients and of course the users. User experience also facilitates innovation because as you talk to the client, there's actually a lot of ideas coming in. You will have more comprehensive business case analysis. you know, you can incorporate different user insights. At the same time, it adds value. So it eliminates ways of removing unnecessary features because early on from the onset, you already have a very good view of what you want to achieve. And then obviously, at the end of the day, it reduces cost in training, support, and maintenance. And last slide, I guess. So, you know, delivering a full user experience is actually, you know, we need to plan a number of UX deliverables. So try to leverage what we have. So we actually have a lot that we can use. And then that's my slide actually. So thank you very much. So we still have time for questions, I guess. So please send it through. I'll try to answer as much as I can.
Thanks, Marlo, for the insightful presentation. Let's quickly take up the questions. I request you to read out the questions and their answers so that all our users may listen to your insights.
Let me check. Okay, so here's the first question. How can we get touch screen while developing web apps and want to convert into mobile apps?
Marlo, are you able to hear me? Your voice is on mute. Can you please unmute? Hello, Marlo. Are you able to hear us? I'm really sorry. I think we have lost connection with the speaker. But we have a long list of questions with us, which we would take offline. And I would like to thank all our guests for joining us for this particular session on behalf of Accenture. And I'm really thankful to our guest speaker today for conducting this wonderful webinar. It was indeed a great session. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you have a great evening ahead.